Hello, my name is Adam, and while I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, these opinions and ideas are my own. I encourage all of you to seek out inspiration through the Holy Spirit, through study, and also by faith, temple, or whatever ways that you find God speaks to you. Just a little disclaimer, in addition to that, I will make mistakes from time to time, and as I discover them and update them, I may not re-record the video. I may just put the updates and the corrections in either the comments or the video description. So this video is going to talk about Daniel's 2300 days, as mentioned in Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, which 2300 days is about 6.3 years. So I believe this is referring to the Salt Lake City Temple renovation project. And like many prophecies, they can have multiple meanings and dual layers. Similar thing might happen in Jerusalem as well. I don't know. But if you follow my previous video where I talked about how things are created spiritually and temporally and spiritually, I believe the Salt Lake City Temple is a sign of the spiritual capital city of the U.S. And its renovation, but also the sort of spiritual destruction of the Salt Lake City Temple in the renovation. You may not have ever thought of it that way, but think about it this way. The abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, think about Matthew chapter 24 and what Jesus said, was referring to the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. Now, Salt Lake City as a archetype or pattern for a spiritual capital city of Jerusalem would fit that pattern. And so a renovation, whenever the temple is taken offline or inaccessible, could be considered a destruction of sorts. So let's read Daniel chapter 8, verse 9 through 14. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, toward the coast, east, and toward the pleasant land. So pleasant land could refer to the United States of America. In ancient time, it was Egypt or other areas that were superpowers. In verse 10, and it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. So in Daniel 8, Daniel sees two animals fighting, a goat and a ram. And the ram represents Media and Persia, and the goat represents the king of Grecia. And they fought, and eventually the goat won. And then there was this horn that came forth, and the little horn came forth out of it. My prior videos, I indicated that I believe this Grecia is China, Media is Russia, and Persia is Iran. And so they're aligned for a time to cleanse the pleasant land, and as it mentions in verse 9, and eventually they fight against each other. Verse 11, and he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now, about 6 months ago, prior to the October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, I mentioned this, and I had a video where I described that because he had a big host, the daily sacrifice was taken away. Well, what caused all temples to close down in 2020? I believe it was COVID, which originated from Wuhan, China, which was a great host. Verse 12, and an host was given to him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Verse 13, and I heard one saint speaking another saint, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So he's talking about the daily sacrifice being taken away. Now that is referred in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11 and 12. It's also referred to in Joel chapter 1 and 2, and I have prior videos where I explain that. Where the prophet did three things in March and April 2020. He closed all temples worldwide. He called two daily fasts for COVID, and he also did a solemn assembly and Hosanna shout. So that, I believe, triggered the start of it fulfilled Joel chapter 1 and 2, and then the start of when the daily sacrifice was taken away is in March 26, 2020, when all temples were closed. So that starts the number of the count of 2,300 days. Interesting here, I just noticed this, where it says to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. So the sanctuary is trodden underfoot, meaning the temples were shut down for a while. Salt Lake City Temple is closed. And the host, which is the people. So it's not only the buildings, but the people also who are wicked will also have a part in this prophecy. So I think it's interesting that on 3/23/23, which is March 23rd, 2023, I call this the sign of 23 that was given. The church announced that the current estimate completion of the project would be in 2026. So if you take that day and you add 2,300 days, you get July 13th, 2026. And then initially it was scheduled to reopen in 2024, and then 2025, and then 2026. So if this date doesn't move in the future, which I don't believe it will, then this is the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, 2,300 days. It's given down to the number of days when it will be cleansed. I don't know if that means it's going to be reopened or finished, or if that means the destruction finishes, whatever happens between now and then. I think it might be both. The 1290 days, I refer to that in other videos, but October 7th, 2023, Jerusalem was attacked by Hamas. So there's the sign of 23. Now, that was kind of interesting because there's this website called godsabcs.com, and they go over in Hebrew and what numbers 1 through 40 can mean. And I looked it up, and it says it's a symbol of death and resurrection life. So if you think about the temple of Salt Lake, it's a death of the temple. It's being taken offline, and then it's going to be resurrected or brought back to life and improved and renovated. The year 2023 was an interesting year in that the Daniel 1290 days was fulfilled. Also, it's halfway through a 7-year period of tribulation. Is 1290 days is 3.5 years. So here's what it says. Here are a couple interesting things from this website. It says in the 2 Hebrew letters, Kaf Gimel, were written, is how they wrote the number 23. These signify an open palm in the act of lifting up, in this case, lifting up from death. 23 is the number of death and resurrection life. Romans 1:28 through 32, there are 23 things listed that are worthy of death. And he goes through them: wickedness, greed, evil, envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, etc. You can read the whole list here. Genesis 7:23. Thus he blotted out everything that was upon the face of the land, from man to animals to creeping things and to the birds of the sky, and they were blotted out from the earth, and only Noah was left, together with those that were with him in the ark. So if you think about the baptism by fire is a pattern of the baptism by water in the days of Noah, this is referring to the cleansing of the earth and Babylon and those who won't listen to God. Genesis 27:42, the 23rd time Jacob is mentioned, which talks about how Rebekah called her younger son Jacob and said, "Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you." So there's this idea of like Jacob trying to be killed. The 23rd time Israel is mentioned is Genesis 49:31, where he has just given instructions to Joseph concerning where to bury him when he died. The 23rd time Joshua is mentioned is in Deuteronomy 13, verse 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, the time for you to die is near. Call Joshua and present yourselves at the tent of meeting that I may commission him." I wonder if that's also referring to translation, because we believe Moses was translated or caught up into heaven. The 23rd time Jerusalem is mentioned is in 2 Samuel 10:14, where David returned from battle after he had defeated the Arameans. Then another battle occurred where another 700 charioteers and 40,000 horsemen were killed. So interesting, could be referring to war and cleansing. So the Salt Lake Temple renovation was mentioned several times in General Conference. One of them was in October 2019. This is a talk entitled "Spiritual Treasures from the Prophet" from President Nelson. He said, "As you know, the Salt Lake Temple, Temple Square, and the adjoining plaza near the church office building will be renewed in a project that will begin at the close of this year. This sacred temple must be preserved and prepared to inspire future generations, just as it has influenced us in this generation. He mentioned it first in the closing remarks, April 2019 General Conference. Plans for the renovation of the Salt Lake Temple, Temple Square, and the adjoining plaza near the church office building will be announced on Friday, April 19th, 2019. So that was his talk in that time period, April 2019. Then on the 19th of April 2019, here's a link from the website where the plans were unveiled with a video and some snippets. The Salt Lake City Temple was decommissioned December 29th, 2019. I believe that when you're counting these days, it's talking about the daily sacrifice being taken away of the world, not the temple. If I'm wrong, you would take December 29th, 2019 and add 2,300 days. I don't think I'm wrong because the 1290 days was the exact number of days from when the temples closed until Israel was attacked. So in context of counting and when that number starts, as far as now, it's history now rather than guessing. So if you go to this website, this is one I found at timeanddate.com. You can take a start date, add a number of days, and it tells you the date. So this is July 13th, 2026 is when the 2,300 days will be filled. That does not include the same day. I can't remember, but there's options there. You can add or subtract whether you want to include that day or not. So just to kind of review, we had the temples close. We had the attack on Israel. Also that day was Putin's birthday, October 7th. Also, we had triple earthquakes on that day. I had a prior video on this. 15 days later, we had the first worldwide ever day of testimony scheduled after October 7th, after the 1290 days. There's 1335 days mentioned in Daniel 12:12, which is November 21st, 2023. It says, "Blessed is he who cometh and arriveth to the 1335 days." Happens to be the Mayflower Compact anniversary on November 21st, 1620, 403 years ago. Not sure if that means anything, but I did a prior video on that as well. And here's a little link to the Wikipedia article on the Mayflower Compact if you want to review that. Now, why this is important, this is the key thing. One of the reasons I'm recording this video is because, okay, so what does this mean? The sanctuary will be cleansed. Well, if you take this in the context of the eclipse, there's 3 eclipses in North America, 2 100% eclipses, and then a 90% eclipse. And then there's 2 eclipses in the Middle East. And if you take that as an upper and lower bound for the cleansing of the Gentiles and the Jews, then you have a time frame. And so just to kind of review, if you take those 2 eclipses in America that are in 2017 and 2024, those are the 100% eclipses, it forms an X. If you add the third 90% eclipse, which is known as the annular eclipse or ring of fire eclipse, then it forms an Aleph or Alpha, which is kind of like a new beginning. If you get rid of that, then you just have the 100% eclipses. It's an X, which is a Tav in Hebrew, which is like an end. So Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. Now, over in the Middle East, you have October 2nd, 2027, first 100% eclipse passing right over Mecca. And the second one, April 20th, 2034, passing over Medina. That forms an X over this Red Sea area. So if you feel like, which is what I feel like, the cleansing of the Gentile nations, America, begins in sometime after 2024, then you've got the next cleansing 2027, 2034, which means the cleansing has to have happened before 2027, which means the 2026 year seems to line up with both Daniel and the renovation of the temple in Salt Lake City. So here's a view of those dates in the U.S. August 21st, 2017, the first one, and April 8th, 2024, the second 100% eclipse. And then you have the 90% annular eclipse, October 14th, 2023. The duration between the first and the second 100% eclipses is really interesting. 6 years, 6 months, and 6 weeks. 666. It also so happens that the Middle Eastern eclipses are the exact same amount of time between those in 2027 and 2034. 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks. I think that indicates destruction as well. Here's the area where it passes over in the United States, Little Egypt. I did a prior video on this, so I'm just going to touch briefly on it. I believe this indicates, there's one other thing I didn't put a slide in, but I'll just mention it. September 17th, 2023 was the very first time that the church had dedicated 3 temples in one day. And it was on a Sunday, and it was also on Rosh Hashanah, Jewish holy day, which represents a time of new birth. It was the first year of the calendar year in Hebrew, on the Hebrew calendar, so it's a new birth. Well, the first temple that was dedicated was Moses, Lake Washington. Moses, Lake Washington. Then you have Israel being attacked October 7th. And then 7 days later, you have an eclipse, October 14th, 2023. Then you have an April 8th, 2024 eclipse. So I think if you put all those together, you have Moses and then destruction upon Jerusalem, and then leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of the bondage of Egypt. So I think we're going to see the destruction of modern day Egypt, Babylon, which is, shouldn't say destruction, cleansing. I hope the U.S., remains a great power and beacon for hope and faith and all the good traditional American values. But either way, there's going to be cleansing coming upon America very shortly. And there's all kinds of signs that I've written about that and in prior videos. So there's a few more slides, kind of review from my other eclipse days. Interesting, between the first eclipse in the Gentile nations, August 21st, 2017, and the first eclipse over the Jewish nations in the Middle East was August 2nd, 2027. It's just short of 10 years, 9 years, 11 months, 12 days. So the days are cut short. Think about Joseph Smith or Matthew, as well as Matthew chapter 24. He says those days will be cut short, or none of their flesh should remain. If you go to Joseph Smith Matthew, it clarifies none of their flesh in Jerusalem shall remain. So the 10 years is cut short between the beginning and the end a little bit, which is kind of interesting. And also the eclipses are cut short. They're not 7 years apart. They're 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks. So even the duration between the eclipses and the duration between the first and the last is cut short. So thank you so much for watching my video. Hope you will share this if you feel so inspired. And thank you for watching my videos.